Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of On the Grid Podcast, Season 4, Episode 9, approaching double figures. Since the start of the year, uploading 9 episodes, not too bad going. This is our second race review. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix has been and gone, and now we're here to review it. I'm your host, Adrian. Joining me, as per usual, is my co-host, Ethan Evans. Ethan, another Max Verstappen domination, but ultimately, how do you think your guys' Mercedes did to begin with?
I'd rather not talk about that. Yeah. What can you say? It's not a great week for Mercedes, is it?
Yeah, it's not been fantastic. It's not been awful, at least for both in the points, I suppose. But before we look at the race review, we can touch upon a little bit about Mercedes because we're not fully going to go on about talking about the Red Bull controversy, I think, in this episode. Um, but I'm going to touch upon one rumor that we'll expand on in the next episode, which will be the preview to Australia, and we'll see all about all the silly season kicking off as well. Max Verstappen, Mercedes, your thoughts?
I mean, it would be quite the shock if it was to happen. I can't see it happening. So I think that all of this Red Bull stuff will eventually blow over. So I can't see Verstappen joining Mercedes, but what does that mean for Verstappen himself? Because obviously Mercedes aren't the team they used to be. What does that mean for Red Bull, you could have two new drivers at Red Bull next season? So it would really throw a spanner in the works for a lot of teams, I'm sure.
Less about Red Bull now because they usually take the headlines anyway. So less about them, more about Saudi Arabia. Let's start with Q1, which saw the bottom five of Valtteri Bottas, the two Alpines of Esteban Ocon and Pierre Gasly, Logan Sargent, and Guan Yu Zhou, who unfortunately did not get a lap in after I believe he crashed in FP3, which brought out the red flag. Massive repair job. They tried to get him out and they couldn't, so he couldn't let set a lap time. Logan Sargent, is it the case of, I don't know whether it's the second or third time around he's here. Obviously, the first time around was last season in F1 for himself, so this is the second time in F1. Do you think he's struggling a touch? I don't know whether he's struggling to get used to the 2024 Williams car, or whether it's just down to the nature of the track and him still not being used to it in a Formula One car. What do you think? What do you think is going wrong with Logan Sargent at the moment?
Well, it's hard to say, at the end of the day, it's the second race of the season, so we shouldn't be sort of saying this is it, this is the level he's at. But it is concerning that he's still the same distance away from Alex Albon. He really needs to be closing the gap because at the end of the day, Alex Albon is not Lewis Hamilton. He's not Max Verstappen. He's a very good driver. He's a top driver, but he's not an elite driver, or not yet. He's extracting a hell of a lot more out of that car than what Logan Sargent is at this moment in time. But what's concerning is the gap. It's sort of half a second plus every qualifying session, and he's always finishing 30, 40 seconds behind. It's never finish 10 seconds behind or finish 15 seconds behind. It's such a big gap that, that would be what is concerning, I think, for Logan Sargent, for Williams at this moment in time at the start of the second season. It really needs to kick on.
And we saw two teams, a double Q1 elimination for Kick and a double Q1 elimination for Alpine. Do you think those two teams are the most on the back burner? Those two are going to be the real strugglers, especially in the opening part of the season, because like we saw in Bahrain, both of those drivers at Kick and Alpine were knocked out in Q1 in Bahrain, and the same happened in Q1 in Saudi Arabia. Do you think those two teams are the ones that are likely to struggle in the opening few races of the season before any upgrades are thought about?
Yeah, well, it's difficult to say because obviously everybody knows struggles at Alpine, but from Kick's point of view, I think Zhou has had pretty good race pace in both the races so far. We'll get onto this race a little bit in a little while, but last week he done a great job, finished P11, um, just outside the points, and if it wasn't for sort of the top five being so far clear, but you could just say it's down to setup. Obviously, there's a layoff between quali setup and race setup. So maybe Kick are looking at it from more of the race point of view, whereas other teams such as maybe a Haas are looking at it from more of the qualifying point of view. And because they've got both cars through to Q2 in both races, haven't they, so far for Haas? So yeah, it's difficult to say. We'll have to wait and see how this continues into the next sort of 3 or 4 races. But initially, it's not looking good for those two teams.
On to Q2 now. And we saw a Formula One debutant in Ollie Behrman, obviously replacing Carlos Sainz, who I believe is doing a lot better after his surgery, after he was found to have appendicitis. He looks to be back in the hot seat in Ferrari for Australia. So let's hope everything goes well with Carlos Sainz's recovery, etc. So Ollie Behrman, Alex Albon, Kevin Magnussen, Daniel Ricciardo, and Nico Hulkenberg completed the bottom five in Q2. We'll talk about Ollie Behrman last because I think we can save the best till last because I mean he stepped up well and truly from finding out he's on pole for Formula 2 only 24 hours prior. He stepped in Formula 1 and he did a very, very admirable job. Let's talk about the two Haasers. Kevin Magnussen outqualified Nico Hulkenberg. Do you think that's a bit of a shock? Do you think Kevin Magnussen stepped his game a little bit in Saudi Arabia and was showing, right, I may have only qualified for Q2 and my teammate qualified for Q3 in Bahrain, but I'm definitely no pushover.
Oh, absolutely. I think that was one of the big things last season, wasn't it? Is how good Hulkenberg was in qualifying, and I think he pretty comprehensively beat Kevin Magnussen. But it's hard to say. Again, we've only had 2 races. We'll have to wait and see how it develops over the season. But I think Kevin Magnussen, from the first 2 performances, we criticised him a lot last season. We said he's very lucky to still have that seat in F1. But he started the season quite well, I think. I think he's put in some good displays, got through to Q2 in both occasions, and then had 2 good race results. So yeah, I think maybe that Haas isn't as bad as we all thought it was.
Yeah, maybe it isn't. Maybe Gene Haas, after sacking Gunter Steiner, got a lot more money in the pocket and he's actually invested in the car, which we don't know. We've only had 2 races, but as we found out in the race, they had a very, very good race result in the end. Daniel Ricciardo in 14th, Alex Albon in 12th. Could they extracted anything more from that session? I really don't know. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo outqualified by Yuki Tsunoda. That is the second time out of 2 races that he's been outqualified by Yuki Tsunoda. And Alex Albon qualified 13th for Bahrain, 12th for Saudi Arabia. A Williams team will be happy that he's on the brink of the top 10. Let's talk about Ollie Behrman. Hot topic. There's so many speculations around the paddock now. Ollie Behrman, does he deserve a seat? Will he get a seat in 2025? Where will he go? Is Haas calling? Will he get a reserve? Will he stay in the reserve role at Ferrari? What did you make of him in qualifying? I mean, he's technically nowhere near his teammate who qualified in P2, his more experienced teammate. But on your first race, to be knocking on the top 10, very, very good going.
Absolutely, and it's marginal, really, isn't it? I think it was 300ths of a second he was off knocking out Hamilton. I think it was to get into Q3. So that's nothing really. That's applying the throttle half a millisecond earlier, or it's such a small amount that you can easily gain that, you can easily lose that in a corner lap to lap. So I think it's a great showing, and it's just unlucky the fact he's missed out on Q3. Nothing more than that. He's just slightly unfortunate, but he's had a great He's had a great weekend. Even he got pole in F2 and then went in an F1 car for the first time. Done a brilliant job. Deserves all the plaudits. And I think next season he should really be looking at a seat at somewhere like Haas. I think that there will be a seat come up there, maybe Sauber because they've also got Ferrari links. Um, but yeah, and there's talk already about is he the successor for when Hamilton retires after being at Ferrari, obviously, which is crazy when he's only had one race, but you know he's had a very good weekend, and I think next season he should be, I think he should be on the grid.
Into Q3 and into the top 10, and were you expecting a different man to be on pole position? I don't think so. Were you expecting a different man to be in P2? Probably you won't. The top two consisting of Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. Question on my mind: are we going to see that top two for most of this season? These two trading blows one after another, and Ferrari maybe catching up Red Bull. What are your thoughts? Leclerc, I think put very good performance, put a very good shift into to be anywhere near Max Verstappen. But Max Verstappen, is in a completely different league.
Yeah, absolutely. What can you do? There's no beating him. I don't think, like I said a couple of times before, I don't think necessarily that Red Bull have that big advantage in qualifying. I think they're more tailored around the race and sort of being like a feather on the tyres because they seem to have no tyre wear issues ever. Um, but yeah, what do you expect? I think this is going to probably be the top two for, I'm going to say at least 15 races this season. We've already had two races now. Yeah, it'll be Verstappen, Leclerc at least 15 races this season. I can see that happening quite easily.
MP3 Sergio Perez and MP4 Spaniard Fernando Alonso. Consistent qualifier Alonso. I think that is the title that Alonso will be getting this season, because we saw him in Bahrain up in P6, and you were expecting, after what we saw in the race, you were expecting, right, there's no chance Fernando Alonso will be getting anywhere near the top five in qualifying. What's the man gone and done? He's gone and put it on P4, and he went purple in a few sectors as well. So, I mean, that just says in itself how much experience and how much hunger and desire Fernando Alonso still has in the sport.
Absolutely. A great performance from Alonso. He's still got it. Yeah, like a little bit concerned after Bahrain seeing the race pace. I'm sure we'll get into the race shortly, but again, he was outstanding. You can't fault the guy at all. He's done a brilliant job so far this season, really maximising the car as you'd expect from Alonso. Yeah, great effort.
Onto the two McLarens, Oscar Piastri in P5 and Lando Norris in P6. Oscar the quicker of the two McLarens this time around, but they've been evenly matched after Bahrain. I mean, I think Lando and Norris lined up side by side with Lando ahead, and this time around, Piastri was ahead of Lando Norris. Through the speed traps, McLaren had a significant straight line speed disadvantage. But I don't think it shows. Qualifying P5, P6, ahead of the two Mercedes, ahead of Tsunoda and Stroll. I think it's the best they can realistically have asked for, especially with a four ahead of them.
Yeah. Again, what is there to say? A good effort from those lot, and yeah, I don't. They're not on the level of Ferrari. I think McLaren's main competition this season is really Mercedes. Again, maybe they could hope to get ahead of Alonso, but past that, you've got to say that Perez's qualifying this season has been a lot better. And then you're looking at Verstappen and Leclerc again, and then as I said before, I could see that being the top two for most of the season. So yeah, two good qualifying sessions from McLaren. They seem to have some good race pace, some good one lap pace even.
The irrelevant Mercedes in seventh and eighth. I mean, not irrelevant. I just think they're not at the level they'd hoped they would have been at the start of this season. Hamilton, and George Russell were both very hopeful that the car would be delivering on one lap pace. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case so far this season. They obviously finished qualifying in seventh and eighth, with Yuki Tsunoda in ninth and Lance Stroll in 10th. Let's get on to our driver ratings and our race review. Max Verstappen, 10 out of 10. Can we move on?
Yeah, I haven't even written any notes from Verstappen. 10 out of 10, bossed it. The fact he's pulling out a second before even the end of the first lap, so it's null and voiding that new rule that the FIA, I'm sure, have brought in to try and keep that gap down. It just says it all, really, doesn't it? 10 out of 10.
On to P2 man, Sergio Perez. I was about to say Lando Norris. I don't know why. I mean Sergio Perez. He made up one place. He obviously overtook Charles Leclerc in the opening laps to gain that P2. Uh, it was a solid performance from Checo. I mean, the only worry how far behind his teammate he is. I've still stood a solid. I've still given him a solid 9 out of 10. I think his performances are starting to creep up. His qualifyings are improving as well, which is important in that inter-team battle, which is non-existent. That P2 battle, should I say, in the championship. But yeah, I think it was a solid performance from Checo. I don't think we saw any mistakes. Executed the overtake on Charles Leclerc very well. 9 out of 10.
Exactly the same here. 9 out of 10. A good effort from Checo. This is the type of performance he needs to be putting in. You know, how many times was he struggling in qualifying last season, but still finishing fourth or fifth? With good qualifying, that race pace of that Red Bull shines through, and Checo is good on his tyres anyway. And he's going hand in hand with that Red Bull, which is so good on its tyres. 9 out of 10. This is exactly what he's brought in to do. They don't want him challenging Verstappen. This is perfect for Red Bull.
On to Charles Leclerc, P3, his first podium of the season, after obviously he missed out on a podium last time out. Qualified P2, finished P3, -1 positions. I don't think he would have expected much more. I think his full focus was keeping the podium place away from the likes of Oscar Piastri and Fernando Alonso. I've also gone with a 9 out of 10. I don't think he's done much wrong. I mean, that safety car chaos ensued, and lo and behold, he had to make an overtake or whatnot. But he's done nothing wrong. He's absolutely maximised that Ferrari. He kept the gap over Oscar Piastri. He used the back markers very well, and got himself a podium. So 9 out of 10. Don't think he's done much wrong. And I mean, he should take this podium as confidence. But with Carlos Sainz potentially returning at Australia, I don't know whether it'll be a little bit of a bogey podium for him. But yeah, 9 out of 10, good performance. The most he could have done in Saudi Arabia.
Yep, same here, 9 out of 10. Again, it looks like as if, Leclerc and Sainz are going to be battling over that final podium position for much of the season. Ferrari, clearly the second quickest car. Don't know how much they have to really fight Red Bull. Maybe they can fight for Perez, for second with Perez on a few occasions. But yeah, he's only finished 10 seconds behind Perez on track, given the penalty as well. So 5 seconds, not too far behind, but a good effort from Leclerc, 9 out of 10.
On to Oscar Piastri in P4. The thing is, I see the theme of this. I see a lot of 8s and 9s out of 10s, because there's not many drivers that did really anything wrong. I mean, the race was, in terms of the position, from probably about 12 downwards, the racing was tight. But for the remaining places, maybe between them and Norris and Hamilton, and maybe between Alonso and Russell, those were the only tussles. But they were a couple seconds behind each other. Oscar Piastri, again, it's a 9 out of 10 performance. you're gaining one place. You're gaining an extra 2 points. I believe it's 2 points. Am I wrong? Am I wrong or am I right? No, it's an extra two. Two. Yeah, 2 points. Yeah, extra 2 points. In the championship from finishing fourth instead of fifth. Um, and it's just another performance where he showed his ability to execute moves, and to get himself in the order, up in the order, and to also just kind of hold that gap, bridge that gap, and to keep himself out of striking range. So yeah, it's another 9 out of 10 from me.
Exactly the same here. I think, in Bahrain, we were giving lots of 6 and 7s out. This time we're giving out a lot of 9s because I think you can't really fault anything the drivers did. Yeah, like you said, for Piastri, maximise the result. He was stuck behind Hamilton for a long period of time, but I could never see him really challenging Leclerc for third place. But yeah, comfortable. I think one of the biggest advantage or like the biggest good points from Piastri's weekend is he was comfortably quicker than Norris all weekend in qualifying in that first stint before obviously the safety car came out and Norris stayed out, but he was still quicker than him and it will secure some good points. And I'd imagine it was quite a lonely race after Hamilton decided to bet.
On to Fernando Alonso. This is a quick driver's ratings because, like you say, there's a lot of 8s and 9s out of 10s. For Fernando Alonso, I'm gonna go for an 8.5 out of 10, purely on the basis of I think Fernando Alonso is expecting a lot from that Aston Martin. And even went through the radio and said, "Yeah, we have no pace to keep up with these guys." And he was getting caught by George Russell, which he didn't in the end. And fair enough, he kept a place in the top five. And I think no matter what, even if he finished fifth, sixth, seventh, I think regardless, it's an 8 out of 10 plus performance from Fernando Alonso. You're not gonna, you're not. Fernando Alonso is maximizing that Aston Martin, and he's doing as much as he can. That qualifying P4, tremendous. Finishing P5 and then gaining more valuable points of a championship is another positive. So I've settled with an 8.5 out of 10. I wanted to vary it a little bit, but if you went with a 9 out of 10, I would not disagree.
I think that's a little bit harsh. I've gone for a 9 out of 10. Aside from beating a Piastri or a Leclerc, what more can he do? I still do think that the Aston Martin probably has the fifth quickest car. But Alonso continues to really extract every little ounce of performance he can from the car, and he's obliterated his teammate. And it's a great result. 10 points for Alonso.
On to George Russell, qualified P7, finished the race in P6. I've gone with an 8 out of 10. I think that Mercedes' strong suit is definitely not in qualifying. In the race, I mean, he did make up a place with obviously Lando Norris going on the alternative strategy. So he gained up a place there, and that was the only place that he made up. So I've gone with an 8 out of 10. I think Mercedes, I wouldn't say they're in a bit of a sticky situation, but they kind of are because I wouldn't say I don't think they're closing the gap to Red Bull anytime soon. With Ferrari, they're kind of pulling away to try and catch up with Red Bull. And I think it's between them and McLaren for third and fourth in the Constructors' Championship. And I think, especially with George Russell finishing 2 places behind Oscar Piastri, it doesn't help Mercedes, but it's a little bit of a comfort buffer that they do have, um, in the Constructors' Championship so far this season. I've got with an 8. It might be a little bit harsh because I don't think he did a lot wrong. He was catching Fernando Alonso, but wasn't able to overtake him. So I've settled with an 8. It's kind of like it's still a fantastic performance. Don't get me wrong. It's just not, it doesn't give me the wow factor that people like or Oscar Piastri or Charles Leclerc or even Fernando Alonso gave me last weekend.
Yeah, no, I agree again. 8 out of 10, and I think maybe I'm being a little bit nice here, possibly. I think you could easily give him a 7 here. But he couldn't get past Alonso, but it's solid points, and he's quicker than his teammate, so you have to kind of take that into account. I just don't think the Mercedes is very good because there's a lot of high speed corners here, and the Mercedes is dreadful. So yeah, 8 out of 10 for Russell. Nothing to shout home about, but good result.
On to It's a Star Boy in Scarlet Red Ferrari. If you know the song, you know the song. But yeah, Ollie Behrman, P7 on his F1 debut. And I mean, the kid has got more points than Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, who are in a dreadful Alpine, don't get me wrong. But last season, if you saw Ollie Behrman in Formula One beating the two Alpines, you'd be like, hold on a second, something ain't right. Um, but P7 on his F1 debut, qualified P11, and obviously he made up places on the likes of Lando Norris, the likes of Lewis Hamilton, the likes of Yuki Tsunoda, and Lance Stroll, who retired. So there are the four places that he made up. But some of the overtakes that he made just showed ruthlessness. Some of them showed patience and experience beyond his years. I'm sorry, he got driver of the day. It just shouts a 10 out of 10 from me. I don't think I can say anything else about Ollie Behrman because I don't want to steal all the comments, all the good comments that you have about Ollie Behrman.
Yeah, no, I can't agree more. It's 10 out of 10. It's probably the easiest 10 out of 10 we've probably ever given on this podcast. A brilliant job. The only thing I will say is I did find the repeated nature of the commentary. I found it a little bit condescending in the end, saying basically instructing Ollie Behrman what to do. He is still a good driver. He's been in the lower categories. He's done a good job in F2 last season. I think from Crofty and Karun Chandok, it was a little bit condescending at the end. It didn't quite sit right with me, but some of the comments they were making. But yeah, 10 out of 10. You can't fault him at all. He's stepped up. He's got some good points, and he's held off Norris and Hamilton, who were on a set of soft tyres at the end, and he's held them off comfortably. He never looked like overtaken. I think they finished 3 or 4 seconds behind, so he still had a gap to them there.
On to Lando Norris, as you say, finished P8 -2 from his qualifying position. Tried to make the alternative strategy work, tried to pit on the soft tyres, and roar through the field in the latter stages, but that didn't happen, unfortunately. I mean, it's a decent performance. It's for an alternative strategy, which unfortunately did not work in his favour. It's an 8 out of 10 performance. It's a good performance. He wasn't anywhere near Oscar Piastri's level the last weekend in Saudi Arabia, but it's still a good race. It's unfortunate that the safety car came out. It kind of ruined his strategy and kind of played in Oscar Piastri's hands a little bit more. But he's still got points. It's still a decent points haul. And apart from that, I don't think he did anything else really bad off the top of my head.
Sorry, what did you give him?
Give him an 8.
An 8. I've given him a
Yes.
6. I thought it was very average. He's gambling on the second safety car coming out, but it hasn't, and he's played that risk when he's not come in. I almost think the better strategy would be to lose that time, inevitably that you lose by double stacking when Piastri's still having his tyres fit, but you take that sacrifice because you know that it's not likely to be a second safety car. So they gambled on something. It's not worked out for them. Did hold up the cars behind quite comfortably, despite being on older tyres and being on when the others were all on the fresh hards. But very average, 8th place. Again, he had the opportunity to fight and push on after the likes of Russell, Behrman and Alonso, but didn't get anywhere near any of them. So it's a 6 out of 10. I think it was very average.
Okay, clearly I've been a little bit nicer for the lower midfield because for Lewis Hamilton, I initially gave him a 7.5. I think I've been a lot nicer to the field. But if we're going down the critical route, let's do that. I don't think it was as bad as Lando Norris's performance because I mean Lewis Hamilton, yes, okay, he did finish 3 places behind his teammate. He tried the gamble on the alternative strategy, which did not work. He tried to put Lando Norris under a lot of pressure. Yes, in essence, it was a little bit average, but I think it kind of was a little bit better than Lando Norris's performance. So I'll settle with a 7 out of 10. I won't go as high, and I won't be as critical. But yeah, I think it was a 7. I think for especially for Lando Norris and Lewis Hamilton, I think their strategy and their races were kind of settled and over when they went on the alternative strategy.
Yeah, I couldn't really split the two, so I just gave Hamilton a 6 as well as Norris. So I thought they were equally as bad. Those two drivers were two of the standout from last season, other than obviously Verstappen. And so far, I've been quite disappointed with both of them. There's a lot of expectation on those two, and I think so far they've really underwhelmed. So 6 out of 10 for Hamilton for the exact same reasoning as Norris.
And on to our final point scorer, who got a massive, massive helping hand from his teammate, which we'll get onto in 2 places' time. Nico Hulkenberg qualified 15th, finished the race in 10th, +5. It's a 9 out of 10. It could even be a 10 out of 10 performance. If we're going down that route, we could even give a 10 out of 10 to Kevin Magnussen for the absolute defending job that he did to help his teammate get a point. But it's a 9 out of 10. You're in the points in a Haas, and yes, we're saying it lightly. You're in the points in a Haas, um, but he did. But I believe he was another one that was on the alternative strategy. And if it wasn't for his teammate, that alternative strategy would not have worked at all, and it would have been thrown in the bin. Um, but fortunately, Kevin Magnussen, the Minister of Danish Defence, came into play and absolutely gave his teammate a helping hand, and handed Nico Hulkenberg a 9 out of 10 from me.
Yeah, again, 9 out of 10. I don't think there's going to be too many points on offer for those bottom five teams this season. So unless someone crashes out like we saw on in Saudi from one of those top five teams, there's not going to be an awful lot of points to be gained by those bottom five. So any point is valuable. And Nico Hulkenberg has got Haas a very valuable point, and Haas are now sixth in the Constructors' Championship. So yeah, is a very valuable point. It's a 9 out of 10. It's only happened because of his teammate, yes, but it's a great effort.
On to Alex Albon P11, and I think his race was sort of very mid, very average. I mean, he obviously did have to do a bit of overtaking, especially when we got into the latter stages of the race, with Ocon, with Sonoda, and all of that gang in the mix. It's borderline. It's a borderline 7, but I'm gonna knock it down to a 6.5. I mean, we're expecting. There's a lot of expectations on Alex Albon's shoulders this season. I think. Will he step up? Will he get a race seat somewhere else? And a lot of people are expecting high and very very good things from him this season. I don't think it's been the case so far this season, but P11 on the brink of the points. Yeah, I think it's the best he could have done. So 6.5 from me.
I think that's quite harsh. I've given Alex Albon an 8 out of 10 because you think when that K-Mag train was going on, he was down in sort of like 15th. He pulled out some brilliant overtakes on Ocon, on Sonoda as well, got himself to the front of that train, and then when it sort of dispersed and Hulkenberg had pit, he finished behind Magnussen on track, I think, but finished 11th because of the penalties. So if it's not for that train, I think he gets those overtakes done earlier. And I think he could maybe challenge Hulkenberg for that last points position. So maybe it could be a point. But also I think what we're forgetting is the fact he had half a wing. He had half a front wing on his car from the Minister of Danish Defence. Absolutely send him into a wall, which is one of the penalties he's got. But yeah, I've given him an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a really good performance from Alex Albon.
Yes, you might be right. The Danish Minister of Defence may have clashed into him, but in the end, the Minister of Defence of Denmark does what he wants and will do what he wants, apart from you've got to take 20 seconds worth of penalties nowadays. On to P12 man who is the Minister of Danish Defence, uh, Kevin Magnussen. Um, Qualified P13, finished P12, and he single-handedly earned Haas a point in this race. One, he absolutely clatters into Alex Albon, sends him into oblivion, see in a bit. Second of all, he just decides to send it on Yuki Tsunoda, because why not? Running off a track and gaining a place in the process, gaining an advantage. I'm telling you, the Minister of Danish Defence does what he wants. Aside from those penalties, what a defending job that he did. It's the two Haas drivers, I'm not splitting them apart. One got a point, one didn't, but they both played a massive part in Haas getting their first point on the board this season. And for me, I mean, I could give a 10 out of 10 for the defensive performance, but he didn't get the point. So I'm not going to split them. I'll give them both a 9 out of 10. And I mean, what a defending job. That man just looked like a man on a mission, placing his car in the middle, did not give a Scooby-Doo on what the other drivers were doing, and just executed a Danish plan down to a T. Like he seriously, what a guy, what a Viking. 12th place, 9 out of 10.
Do you know what's the funniest part? Is after Hulkenberg pit, Magnussen stopped obviously coasting and losing 2 seconds a lap. He built a gap. He built a big gap to the cars behind, and he was so much quicker than that train behind, which I think is even funnier. He was holding them up and said, "All right, I'm off. See you later." And also the way it worked is that he finished 11th on track. Everybody up to 12th got lapped. So you had 20 seconds on, and Kevin Magnussen's only finished 12th because that's obviously as far down as it can go. So he's only actually lost one position through 20 seconds worth of penalties. And I think it's just, I find it hilarious. I'm so close to giving him a 10 out of 10, but it is a 9 out of 10 because he did get 2 sets of penalties. So 9 out of 10. I just love the S house, the S housery from Kevin Magnussen. I'm not going to swear on the podcast, but brilliant effort. And yeah, it'll be such a valuable point come the end of the season. Because like I said, I don't think there's many points up for grabs this season for those bottom 5 teams. So you've got to seize it by any means necessary wherever you can. And they did.
Yeah, who cares? We can say it on this episode, the shithousery. We can swear on this one because it was complete shithousery. I'll let you say it. Go on, I'll let you.
It's the absolute pinnacle of shithousery from Kevin Magnussen.
That felt good, didn't it? That felt good. No comment from Ethan Evans. He's just loving the moment. On to 13th place, Esteban Ocon. And actually, to be fair, I'll point this out. When I was looking through my notes and actually scribbling down who finished where, I completely forgot the people that got lapped. And I was putting Kevin Magnussen in 15th because initially on the graphic, that's what it showed, that he finished down in 15th. But then I open Twitter yesterday, just before I was going to do my notes, and I see him up in 12th, and I'm like, hold on, wait a second. Let me confirm this with F1 the F1 website as well. And it confirmed it, P12, and I was like, okay, roll with the punches. Like I say, moving on to Esteban Ocon, 13th place, decent performance. To say that the Alpine are absolutely nowhere to be seen. It's a 7 out of 10, I think. It's a good performance from Esteban Ocon. Like we say, he did make a few neat overtakes. And obviously it's hard for the Alpine team to go anywhere at this moment in time, but it was a good performance. Don't get me wrong, Alpine are obviously expecting a lot more, but it's definitely not P19 and P20, isn't it?
Yeah, I've gone for a 6 out of 10 for Esteban Ocon, so not too much difference from yours, but for pretty much the same reasoning from where we thought that Alpine was going to be. And Esteban Ocon's put it in 13th. It's a brilliant effort. He's finished ahead of both V-Carbs who we thought would be much better than they were. Um, and yeah, it's a good effort from Esteban Ocon, and maybe all is not lost for Alpine this season if they can put in some good performances like that. They've got two top quality drivers, as we said before. They just need to give him that car.
On to Logan Sargent, who single-handedly, alongside Nico Hulkenberg, made up the most places in the Grand Prix with 5. Obviously, a few of those come from Lance Stroll retiring, Pierre Gasly retiring on lap 1, Valtteri Bottas, for example, Guan Yu Zhou, etc., etc. Um, but yeah, I just think Logan Sargent has been the average performer, just the average Joe, just the average American Joe. It's not been the Captain America that we saw in Texas when he gained his first point in Formula One. It's definitely not the Captain America performance. I've given him a 6. I think it was just your average Joe performance. Wasn't spectacular, wasn't too bad. It was just in the middle, just meh, just average.
Yeah, I've given him a 5. I think realistically he has to be beating Alex Albon when he's got that amount of damage. But he's only finished 14th. It's not a terrible result. So I think that yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult one to judge, but yeah, he's not going to be doing much better than that. But maybe he should be, and that's the problem. So 5 out of 10 from me.
Yuki Tsunoda up next, and to say that he qualified in P9, very, very anonymous. Back, pretty much the back of that pack, the back of that chasing pack behind Kevin Magnussen. I'm going to call it the Danish destroyer train, because destroying front wings going into Yuki Tsunoda. Unfortunate, obviously, for Yuki to have to get on the end of a bit of a swipe from Kevin Magnussen, and then K-Mag going back on the track. But yeah, it's another 6 out of 10 performance. I've gone very. I think I'm in a happy mood because this performance could easily be a 5 out of 10, uh, bang middle of the road. Um, but yeah, I think the V Carbs, we were expecting big things from the V Carbs, and they've been struggling a lot. Daniel Ricciardo as well, who finished 16th, and I'm going to add him into here as well, because everybody was expecting some sort of this is the 2023 Red Bull car. They're going to unleash hell on earth. They're going to be second. Well, they're not going to be second in the Constructors' Championship, but they're going to battle up there. And it's just been very average so far. So I've given Yuki Tsunoda a 6 out of 10. We'll go on Daniel Ricciardo as well as obviously the V Cobs. Were 15th and 16th, and I gave Daniel Ricciardo a bit of a lower grade of 5, purely on the basis Yuki Tsunoda out qualified him again, and it's just been I don't know whether Daniel Ricciardo's finding it hard to adapt to the new V Carb car. But yeah, both of those performances very average, and quite frankly below the expectations everyone's having so far.
Yeah, I've gone for a 5 for Yuki Tsunoda, the exact same reason as I said for Logan Sargent, very average. I think he should have probably made that one of those moves on Magnussen's stick. I know he was defending a lot, but you kind of got to be a little bit smarter with what you're doing. Maybe you can catch him unaware at one point, be a bit unconventional in your overtake, but he's got to make that strategy stick from my point, or that move stick from my point of view. But Daniel Ricciardo, I've gone for a 3 out of 10 because I think it's such a difficult one because he was half a second off in qualifying, and he was the only reason he finished only one place below Yuki Tsunoda is because of Kevin Magnussen. If Kevin Magnussen doesn't hold that entire field up, he finishes 30 seconds behind him or something like that. He had a spin at the start on his own, and he's really struggled this season. I think he needs to be putting in some better performances in order to, because this is a guy we're talking about as potentially being in that Red Bull next season. But it's not been a good weekend for Daniel Ricciardo for me.
On to the last two race finishes. Valtteri Bottas in 17th and Zhou Guanyu in 18th. Let's start with Valtteri Bottas. Pretty much the same as Daniel Ricciardo. I don't think there's a lot to explain here. Very average. So I've gone with another 5 out of 10. I'm happy to give out 5 out of 10s on a frequent basis if these performances do continue. And then Joe Guan Yu, I've actually gone for a 6.5. Made the alternative strategy sort of work, but then that absolute awful pit stop. Do kick need to get some new um new personnel to do their pit stops, because those pit stops are truly killing them. And yeah, Joe Guan Yu finished the end of the pack in 18th. So yeah, I've gone with 5 and 6.5 out of 10. Might be again a bit lenient, but I think I'm feeling in a bit of a happy mood to give up these ratings.
Yeah, I think you're being quite nice again. I gave Valtteri Bottas a 3 for the exact same reason as Daniel Ricciardo. He was miles off. He would have been nowhere near it if it wasn't for Kevin Magnussen. And then for Joe, I've actually given him a 6. Yeah, I've given him a 6. So I thought he was so unlucky because he's running up in 11th. He was on that same strategy that Nico Hulkenberg was. It would have worked again if it was because of Kevin Magnussen, but he had a horrendous pit stop again from Hick Sauber, and they completely messed up his race, and he's ended up finishing last of the actual finishers. So a 6 out of 10 because it's not really his fault.
And to finish off, I'm going to go on record that I've actually not given Lance Stroll or Pierre Gasly any rating, purely on the basis Lance Stroll crashed very early on. Pierre Gasly retired after lap one. So I've gone with not applicable. If you've given a rating, I'm happy to settle with whatever you've gone.
I have. I've given Lance Stroll a 1 out of 10 because it should have been an easy 10th place at the very worst. It should have been a 10th place, and he's ruined that. Scores a safety car. It's such a stupid mistake to make as well. He's just turned into the corner too early, broke his suspension on that front left, and then he's a passenger. And then for Pierre Gasly, I've gone for a 4 out of 10. It would have been a 5 out of 10, but he got beaten by his teammate in qualifying, and that's the only real reason I've got to judge him. You can't really rate him too harshly because he retired on the first lap with the gearbox issue. But he got beaten by his teammate, so that's in qualifying. So that's really the only thing I've got to go on. So yeah, that's my grading for those two.
Okay, we'll happily settle with a 1 out of 10 for Lance Stroll. Is this our first 1 out of 10? I think it is.
Of the season so far, yeah. We gave
Oh,
Gasly and Ocon 3 out of 10s for Bahrain, but nothing below that.
well, Lance Stroll, buckle up your ideas. You need to get back into the hot seat in Australia.
I tell you what, though, that's one of the most annoying things about Lance Stroll is we were praising him a lot last week. We gave him an 8 out of 10. We thought it was a good performance. He only finished 10th, but it's a good performance from Lance Stroll. That's what he needs. It's the type of performance that he needs to be putting in. And then he goes and does that and he ruins it completely. How many times have we seen this from Lance Stroll where he put in a good performance and then ruin it the week after?
Lance Stroll, read my lips. You're ruining it. You're ruining it. You ruined it for yourself. We gave you an 8, we praised you, and then you do that. So if I speak, I'm in big trouble, and I don't want to be in big trouble, but yeah, you ruined it for yourself, big man. Um, that is the end of our race review of Saudi Arabia. Um, and the end of our second round of driver ratings. Yeah, it's been an eventful 2 races. Obviously, Max Verstappen's taken both victories, but the shining light is Charles Leclerc did get the fastest. So I'll take that all day, every day as an extra point, whatever. Um, but yeah, like I say, that's the end of this episode. Thank you, Ethan, for joining me this week. Next week we'll be back previewing Australia and looking ahead to Melbourne, looking over the jibber jabber that's happening currently in the paddock. As we've not had time to kind of look over it this episode, but certainly look out for next episode when it drops. We'll look over all the gossip and we'll be previewing the Australian Grand Prix. Thank you for listening once again, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.